decreed, call upon me and I shall respond to you. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَسْتَكْبِرُونَ عَنْ عِبَادَتِي سَيَدْخُلُونَ جَهَنَّمَ دَاخِرِينَ. Indeed, those who are too arrogant from my worship, then they will enter into Jahannam. They will enter into Jahannam dakhirin, in humiliation. So this ayah that the Shaykh then mentioned as part of the proof for speaking about this issue of ad-du'a and da'wah, he says there are numerous things that this ayah contains. That is Surah Ghafir, Surah 40, verse number 60. Surah 40, verse number 60. The first thing that the ayah contains is that in this ayah, Allah Azza wa Jal is directing His servants from His benevolence, from His mercy, from His kindness, from His generosity, is that He's directing them to invoke Him, to call upon Him. And we see this in another ayah. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِ عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. When my servants ask you concerning me, then indeed I am close. I respond to the one who calls when he calls. Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah 2, verse 186. That's the first thing. This is from Allah's mercy, kindness and generosity that He's directing His servants to invoke Him. Secondly, Allah Azza wa Jal has promised a response, because He said, Astajib lakum. And your Lord has decreed, call upon me, I shall respond to you. And we see that in numerous ahadith, it is mentioned that so long as there is no sin involved in the dua, so long as there is not any dua for cutting off ties of kinship, and anything which is unlawful, then Allah will answer the dua so long as it is done with certainty and with sincerity. And so Allah will do one of three things, in fact. And this we know from the texts. Any dua made by a believer which does not involve any sin, then there are three outcomes of that dua. The first outcome is that Allah Azza wa Jal will hasten the thing that you have made dua to Allah for. Allah will hasten that and bring that and answer your dua and bring it to you. The second situation is that the dua will not be answered, dua may not be answered, but in recompense, something of evil is removed from you. Some harm that would otherwise have come to you, that evil has now been, Allah removed it from you. Allah decreed that it not come to you. So obviously your dua was decreed, and the harm being removed was also decreed. So this is an important point, because often the people who make dua, and they make dua for a specific thing, and it could be for the removal of an illness, it could be for a child, it could be for whatever is permissible and lawful, and a person doesn't find his dua is not answered. A year passes, 2 years pass, 3 years pass, 5 years pass, 10 years pass, his dua is not answered. And often people neglect or forget the fact that perhaps Allah Azza wa Jal, because He's most knowledgeable of the affairs of His servant and what is good for him and beneficial for him, then He will not answer the dua. And in recompense, in response, He will remove from him evil, some evil which may have come to him, that makes up for the dua that he was making for that other thing. And so this person not realizing this, because obviously a person cannot know evil which hasn't come to him, right? So a person cannot appreciate calamities that haven't actually come to you. So this is something very, very easy to forget, that perhaps Allah Azza wa Jal has removed countless calamities that would have come your way, but they haven't come your way because you've been making dua for something, and so that dua in itself is ibadah, is worship of Allah. So to reward you for that, some calamities, some evils have been removed from you, which you obviously won't know. But He hasn't given you the thing that you asked for, because perhaps within it there is some, either maybe Allah wants to test your patience, Or maybe that thing itself there wouldn't be some good in it because Allah knows what you do not know. So that's the second outcome of a dua. The third outcome of a dua is that Allah Azza wa Jal will leave the outcome and the reward for the hereafter. For the hereafter. So either perhaps that dua might be something which is for the hereafter. Oh Allah, save me from the calamities and the afflictions of Yawm al-Qiyamah. That dua clearly can only be answered, the outcome of it, and it can only be answered on Yawm al-Qiyamah. Or it could be you are asking for something in the life of this world, and Allah will not give it to you, but in the hereafter He will give you something as a reward for that dua and to make up for that thing that you didn't receive in the life of this world. So Allah is preserving the reward and the benefit and the outcome of that dua for you in the hereafter. So this then allows us to see how to despair of making dua. No person ought to despair from making dua. And anyone who despairs of making dua, then obviously he is ignorant of these realities, of these affairs, of this issue of dua. So these are the three outcomes of a dua. Allah Azza wa Jal has said, Astajib lakum. Astajib lakum. I shall respond to you. And the response to a dua can be in any one of these three ways. Right? Allah will respond to you. He will respond to you. Whether it is by your dua actually being answered immediately or hastened, so you get what you asked for, or by calamities being removed, or evil being repelled from you, or you being shielded from some evil, or in the hereafter your dua will be recompensed and answered. So it's a promise, and Allah never ever breaks His promise. So the Shaykh says, so therefore any dua that you make which is upon ikhlas, your dua will never ever be wasted. And always make that dua being absolutely certain of being answered. Now that you know these three things, you know with yaqeen, with certainty, that if you are sincere and you're not asking for something which is haram, unlawful, your dua will be answered in one of these three ways. So this is